I now call the Ripon City Council meeting for December the 13th to order. Vice Mayor Euchre, will you please do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. Please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will you all please remain standing for the invocation?
Hi there, my name is Pastor Mark Van Dyke, and I'm the pastor of Ammond Valley Christian Reformed Church, just 2 blocks south of where we're meeting. And just a word before I pray is I was noticing we are the Ammon capital of the world. And the reason that we can be is because it's raining right now, right? And so I think farmers can work hard, but they can't make it rain. And so I think we need to praise God and thank God right now for the rain that we have and pray for more. Let's do that. Our Lord God, we thank you. We pause now to show our gratitude to you for making this town an industrious and prosperous town, for making our orchards so plentiful and bountiful, and for enabling the safety of our farmers over this past harvest season, and for enabling a good crop to grow this past season. Lord, we thank you for the rain that we received today, and we pray that you would continue to send rain and send snow into the mountains so that there would be water for all of the crops around Ripon to grow. Lord, we thank you for not just making us a prosperous town, but also a very safe one. And so we pray that you would continue to protect first responders, all those who serve in our police and fire departments. Lord, we thank you for inspiring a heart of service in our police officers and firefighters. Lord, enable them to continue to do their work, to administer justice, and to help those who are in need. Lord, we pray that you would guide all of us in our deliberations this evening and help us to know the best way to go forward as a town. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Lisa, will you please do the roll call?
Councilmember Leo Zuber.
Present.
Mark Winchell.
Present.
Mike Rasucia.
present.
Vice Mayor Dean Euchre.
Here.
Mayor Jake Parks.
Here. We will now move on to we did the approval of the minutes first, correct, Lisa? Oh, we did the public discussion first. Oh, okay. If any member of the city council or of the general public would like to come up and speak on an item not on the agenda, please step forward to the podium and state your name and address. Seeing none, we will go ahead and close the public discussion. And now we will go on to the approval of the minutes.
So move.
Second.
Okay. We will now move on to the resolution to accept the election results.
I'll move to approve the resolution.
Second.
So now with that being approved, it's so we'll also do the reorg right now, won't we? Not yet. Okay, so Councilman Winchell, will you please step forward with me?
I know. I noticed that.
I would like to present this plaque
Never entered my mind.
on behalf of his service here to the city of Ripon. Mark came in at a very tumultuous time. He came in at a very heartbreaking time for this council when we lost former mayor, former police chief Rednut, and Mark has filled in admirably. He has contributed to all the conversations that we've had. His input has been invaluable combined with his experience and his viewpoint, has made us all look at things a little bit differently, and really made each and every single one of the council members take a step back, examine their thoughts, examine where they stand. And I know I've appreciated the conversations I've had with him and the discussions that we've had. And so, Mark, on behalf of the City Council, I would like to thank you for your service over these last 2 years, and I also want to thank you for getting to know you much, much better.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Well, you know, I'm real nervous talking tonight, but it's been an honor and a privilege to serve on both the Ripon Planning Commission and also on the City Council, and it was an honor to take Red's place and serve out his term. I hope that I've had a positive influence upholding our community values and help to keep Ripon a wonderful place to live and raise a family. Thank you very much.
We will now move on to the administering of oath for the newly elected City Council members. So, Councilman DeGraff, would you like to go ahead and step forward?
And council members Zuber and Parks, please.
Yeah, we get to go up there too.
Come up here, more fun.
She's gonna.
Well, that's why they have ties on. That's why they have ties
They
on.
got reelected.
Yeah, we'll wear them when we get reelected.
Okay, I will administer the oath of office. So please raise your right hand. I state your name.
Daniel DeGraff.
Leo Zuber.
Jake Parks.
Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter, and will at all times do so in a manner which is at all times in the best interest of the citizens of the City of Ripon. And I do further swear that during such time that I am a member of the City of Ripon, I will not advocate nor become a member of any party or organization, political or otherwise, that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of the State of California by force or violence or other unlawful means. If you agree, say I do.
I do.
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Congratulations. Okay, no, because we will move into the council reorganization. So per section 2.04020 of the Ripon Municipal Code, for the reorganization of the council, the positions of mayor and vice mayor will be asked if they are willing to accept their appointments, and the seats will be noted as they are in the agenda. So seat 1 will be for Mayor Dean Euchre. Seat 2 will be for Vice Mayor Mike Rasusha. Are the two of you willing to serve in those areas?
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Seat 3 will be for Councilmember Leo Zuber. 4 for Councilmember Jake Parks. And seat 5 for Councilmember Daniel DeGraff.
I've got two phones.
Yeah, I got 2 phones.
I think I stacked up there.
You practiced this, didn't you? Mike, is this yours?
Yeah, thank you. I was told to leave everything there.
Well,
But
I
Dean
brought
took mine.
Okay.
I think is that my pin?
Yeah, that's probably your pen. Can I have my pen?
Sure.
We help run it.
I'm supposed to bring her.
Daniel, do you have a pen?
I'll hand the meeting over to you.
Okay. So we're right here.
Show it over.
So approval of the agenda is posted.
So move.
Second.
But I do have some, whoop,
Wait, yeah.
I got mine under
First you have
control.
to ask for the consent calendar. I mean, if there's,
If anybody wants to pull.
yeah,
Any items need to be pulled off
I
the
do.
consent?
so do I.
Go ahead,
I'd like to
Mike.
pull 2K, 3A, and 4A.
That's it?
That's it for me.
Leo,
2F.
that's it?
Yep. Well, I had 4A, but Mike already did it.
With that, we'll vote on the balance of the consent calendar. Got a motion?
I'll make a motion we approve the consent calendar as amended.
Second.
With that, we'll start with 2F. Mr. Zuber?
Got to get to the right place here. Is this for you? Is this part of something else that's going on? I don't remember talking about work on the circulation element.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that. This was actually part of the development fee update process. We were going to be updating the master plans as part of that, and this is part of the master plan update for the circulation element.
For the
Development, when we went through the the development fees to actually.
Oh, okay. All right.
This is part of that update. As you know, we kind of flipped that process halfway through it so we can get through the update on the fees prior to the update on the circulation element itself. Once we did figure out that the circulation element wouldn't be changing that much. So they are finishing up the circulation element. We should see that shortly after the first of the year for finalizing that.
Thank you.
Mr. Restuccio?
2K.
2K?
The question I have is, have we received that appraisal yet?
We have seen a draft of that appraisal. Staff is currently reviewing that and getting comments back to Mr. Cogdell.
Okay, so it's in the process and whatnot of being finalized. Do you know when we'll get that back? So we can take a look at it?
Yeah.
Not that it matters, but it'd be nice to look at.
Yeah. Once it's finalized, we're planning to schedule a meeting with the city council to go over that.
Perfect.
Before we make an offer.
Okay, I just didn't see it, and we're paying the invoice, and I didn't know if we had it or not. Thanks. 3A?
3A.
So, Chief, this is for you, and I know I bring it up every time we talk about fees. The fees on this are 175 cost to the total cost, 38 for staff time. Does $38 really compensate for staff time to issue whatever you're doing here?
I think I can handle this one, Councilmember Stuccia. Actually, we did take into consideration the police time to do the background check and then staff time. It only takes about 15 minutes to a half hour for like the planning secretary to kind of process the permit fee. So it does cover the staff time on that.
Really? $38? As long as you're getting, reimbursing yourself for at least costs.
That's it?
Yeah.
4A?
And then I have 4A. Can somebody explain a little bit about that? Not a lot of detail. I mean, I read through it all, but just...
So for some time now, Nestle's has been working on a groundwater remediation project, and they've been working with the State Water Board to do that. As part of their most recent submittal to the Water Board, they have a plan now to do off-site treatment. So they are going to install a pump off of Walnut Avenue, I believe, a water well. They are going to pump that, treat the water. They're going to convey that water from that location on Walnut Avenue along the frontage road to the old Nestle site. At the Nestle site, they're going to re-inject that that treated water back into the groundwater.
Are those pipes already there to do all that? Okay, that's what you have to install. Does this go back like 20? I mean, it seems like we talked about this last time I was on the council.
I believe they've been doing this since the mid-'80s.
Okay. All right, good. That's good enough for me then. Thank you.
Just one other difference between what we're doing here and what we've done in the past is that they've been using our facilities previously. Now they're installing their own facilities, and so that's why we need to give them a license to use our right-of-way.
Right, got it. Thank you.
I have a question. Are they going to be digging up the street to do this, to install that pipeline?
They're going to do a majority of it using directional drilling, a trenchless type method. There are some locations where they will have to open up to do the drilling, but for the most part, it will be trenchless, very similar to what was done near the high school recently.
And we're
by
going
PG&E.
to, I'm not sure that's a good example, but we're going to make sure that when they leave, the street's back to what it was before?
Yes.
Okay.
Any more questions? So with that, we'll call for approval of 2F, 2A, 2K, 3A, and 4A.
So move.
Second.
Okay, we'll close the consent calendar and open up public hearing.
No.
I'm sorry, I missed that. I was thinking that was already done. Mr. Ex-mayor is going to do a proclamation.
Formal.
Or past mayor is a proper terminology.
Recently booted mayor. How do you feel?
Mr. Mayor?
Can't treat you with a vote. Surprised you.
The guy's an engineer. I think he figured it out.
That means he has a lot of intelligence. That doesn't mean he knows like common sense.
Well, that's
Your mic's on.
Clarice, I won't call you up here, because if I call you up here, I won't make it through it. As some of you know, as some of you may not know, we lost a valuable member of this community on Thanksgiving Day. Battalion Chief Dave Lewis passed away from his battle with cancer. As many members of this council and myself have known Dave for better part of 20 years, which is saying a lot. Dave's family has been in this community since before we were a community, and Dave really has come to embody everything that Ripon stands for: a sense of community, a sense of pride, a humility, fortitude. I mean, this is a man that not only was a battalion chief, but also raised pigs, also took care of his family's orchard, his almond farm. On top of coaching football, on top of contributing to the FFA and raising pigs, and even more so than that, raising a fantastic family. I've known the Lewis family since I was in high school, before I was in high school. Went on many family vacations with them. I've got to know Josh, Kaylee, Courtney, Clarice. They're fantastic people, and a lot of that is due to the influence of Dave. And he is somebody that will be sorely missed. You can always use more people like Dave Lewis. You can never have too many people that are willing to pitch in. Never have too many people that are willing to, after high school Friday football games, stay up till 1 a.m. cleaning out a snack bar, putting in Saturdays, putting in off days, and more than that, raising 3 fantastic kids. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. So on behalf of the city of Ripon, I would like to present this proclamation to you in the memory of Dave.
So open up the public hearing. Public hearing on an annual report of the capital fees covered under Government Code Section 6600 AB 1600. Is that you, Kevin?
66,000. I think Lisa's going to start. I can help as needed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a public hearing on our annual report of the capital fees for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2016, pursuant to the California Government Code Section 66,000. According to the code, within 180 days after the fiscal year end, we are required to report on the following items: the description of the fee, the amount of the fee, the beginning and ending fund balances, the amount of the fees collected and interest earned, an identification of each public improvement of which the fees were expended and the amount of the expenditures, identification of an approximate date when the construction of the public improvement will commence, a description of any interfund transfers or loans made, the amount of any refunds made, and so all of these items have been included in the report. This information should be reviewed at the next, according to the code, this information shall be reviewed at the next regularly scheduled public meeting, not less than 15 days after the information is made available to the public. This information was made available to the public on November 23rd. So this report is being brought for public discussion and for council's approval this evening. Action from council should be to approve the annual report of capital fees. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I need to open this to the public first, right? Does anybody from the public have a comment on the subject? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Public discussion, anybody from the council? Mr. Zuber?
You turned it on this time. Okay. I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment, and that is, if you look at the report, we have negative balances in a lot of places on this. And yet, when the question is asked whether or not we can do something in that particular area, there is money available. I think at some point, we need to have, I don't know if it's a workshop, a discussion, or whatever, because I've been working on this for 4 years, and every time this issue comes up, I get confused all over again. And it's frustrating sometimes because we talk about a need or something that is present in the community, and if you look at this, we can't do anything about it. And yet if you look at the treasurer's report in that area, there is some money. And in order for me to be able to help you do a budget and also to plan to address the need, I don't know about the other four, but I need some help in understanding how this is handled. In other words, City Hall Fund shows a negative balance of $5 million. I think I understand how we spend it, but at the rate we're collecting the money, it's going to be 57 years before we pay that off. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, then we better not plan on doing anything around City Hall for 57 years because we're not going to have any money. It's things like that that I need some help getting straightened out.
I think I understand, I do understand where you're coming from, and I think what some of the challenges are. There's a number of different pots of money that we use through the whole budgeting process. This is one aspect of that process, but we could take a look. Lisa and I were talking, actually we've been talking about it for some time now. There's different ways to kind of organize this report to hopefully address some of that confusion. And maybe the other thing we need to do is ahead of this report kind of give maybe an overall summary of where we're at in all these accounts. But Lisa and I could spend some time trying to reorganize this and maybe have some offline discussions with you about how we could address some of those questions and better organize this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else got any questions? And I just bring in on that yeah, it would be nice to have something that's, I would say, easy or to understand for if you're not a math major or like Mr. Restuccio is, to figure that stuff out. It's very difficult. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay. So we don't need to vote on that, right?
No,
we have to approve it.
Approve.
I'll move we approve the annual report.
Second.
Okay. We'll move on to the 6A ordinance of the City Council of the City of Ripon, adding Chapter 5.48 outdoor dining within a public right-of-way, and amending Chapter 5.40 licensing and regulations of special events, Section 9.04.020 alcohol beverages, and Section 9.23.040 General Rules of City Parks of the City of Ripon Municipal Code. And I believe, Kevin, this is your,
Well, I'm going to start, and then Kevin's going to help me.
okay, go ahead, Tom.
I wasn't part, thank you, Dean. I wasn't part of the three-person, or the council committee that met to go over the proposed changes, so I'm new to the topic, but I did review the summary, and it looked as though the council committee was recommending three changes: one to allow alcohol at the amphitheater, one to allow alcohol to be served at restaurants between Stockton and Norse as part of their operating permits, and one that would allow for a once-a-year community dining event. As for the latter of the three, staff is not recommending any action at this time, and we can talk about that. As to the other two events, staff believes we can contain and properly manage events at the amphitheater as well as events in the downtown district as part of a restaurant dining experience. And so the changes to the ordinances that are in your packet tonight deal with those two areas and not with the third area.
Right.
Okay, so I would just introduce the staff report into the record with that opening remarks, and then maybe we can just walk through a couple of the comments that you see in the ordinance itself. We thought it would be helpful for discussion purposes to let you see how we sort of interact with each other on these things. One person will draft and other folks will comment, and then we thought it would be useful tonight for you to see some of the areas of discussion as we looked at these ordinances. So first, looking at dining within the public right-of-way. Without the benefit of my glasses tonight, showing how old I am, comment number one deals with section 030, and the area that we were initially discussing was between Stockton and Norse. My understanding is there's been some subsequent discussions since then about expanding that area. Kevin, do you want to fill in on that real quickly?
Yeah, myself, Chief Armandi and Ken Zeiderbart had an opportunity, and Mayor Euchre was there as well, had an opportunity to meet with representatives of a number of downtown businesses to talk a little bit about this. As Tom mentioned, there was a number of comments we had. So we presented it to them and received feedback from each of those businesses. I think some of the general feedback we received from the businesses that's currently not included in here, and I think we'd bring it back as a change, if council decides to move this forward, is the businesses they believed it was important to have some consistency between the businesses. So the crash pots or the planter areas look the same, the fencing looked the same, the umbrellas look the same. They thought it was important for that consistency to exist between the different businesses, take advantage of this. One of the other items that they brought up is the opportunity for a partnership with the city. And maybe even other local businesses. One of the businesses discussed was Silverado, if there's a way to work with them on making something like this happen. So we haven't gotten to the details of that, what that partnership will look like, but that was something that the businesses thought was important as this moves forward. But to address Tom's first comment on there, the businesses did feel that if this was a good thing, it shouldn't only be not only exist between Stockton and Norris, but exist between Stockton Avenue and Acacia Avenue, all the way to the elementary school.
Okay, great. So any council feedback on that issue as we move forward?
I do have a question, if I can. So what, I would have thought every restaurant would have wanted their own little kind of theme out there rather than all being consistent. But they want everybody to be consistent.
Yeah, even down to the umbrellas and the furniture.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, that's interesting to hear. I would have thought they wanted it.
Which the continuity of it creates better curb appeal of it. It doesn't look like a hodgepodge where you have a mishmash.
Well, no, I know what it looks like. I've been to
Yeah.
it before, and I've seen restaurants where they completely do something completely different, and just because they wanted to, so that's just kind of interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the concepts that we talked about, this is something that still needs to be developed and worked out, if this is something that's going to move forward. But if there was a way for Silverado to have the stuff available to rent, so at least if there's some consistency moving down, they could have a certain number of these setups, and whoever chooses to do it those years could could implement something like that. So, having some consistency may help, if something like that was to work itself out.
I know there are other questions. Please go ahead.
Jake, go ahead. Watch it, Tom.
I don't even have
What
one of those.
What I was going to say, so are they talking about Silverado partnering up with, say, the Roadhouse and doing like a Silverado night type thing out there, or are we talking about Silverado doing something in front of their own business?
No, it would only be available to the businesses that are dining establishments.
Right.
But having, partner, we said Silverado, but it really could be almost any business that's in that line of work, to have them available to rent. So
The equipment, the barriers.
Okay. I thought we were talking about the actual physical space between, in front.
I hear you.
Okay.
Mr. Zuber?
I guess mine is more of a procedural question. Do we want that degree of specificity in an ordinance? We may have a group of businessmen right now who like everything the same. 5 years from now, we could have a group of businessmen that don't want to touch each other and want their own thing, and now we got a 60, 90-day process to go through and let them do it.
Yeah, that's part of the discussion we've been having. And if you look at the next comment, there's some very specific requirements in this ordinance as far as, because there are concerns about people parking vehicles right next to where people are going to be dining. And you are effectively closing down Main Street for parking in a lot of areas if you go with this ordinance as drafted, because you have to take care of public safety, you have to provide the crash barriers, you have to provide the fencing. And so there are a lot of very specific requirements in here. And one of the questions that I raised as my comments on the initial draft was, will enough businesses apply or be willing to do this? And so, you're right, you raise a question that's something that we wrestle with as part of drafting this.
Is it possible to have an ordinance that defines, the idea it's limited to parking spaces, it's, there shall be, the general things,
Right.
and then you have an attached resolution that basically defines the stuff, and if they want to change it, as long as it doesn't require changing the skeleton, we just adopt a new resolution.
Yeah, we've talked about that, of just having some implementing requirements, implementing standards in almost like a manual, if you will, and adopt that by resolution, and that way we can leave the big picture framework in the ordinance. We might have to do that because we're going to live into this and see how it works.
I will have to say that I personally had a different take on it than what you're saying, Kevin, because I thought the way the businesses, they want it to be uniform in the structure, but they can still have their own theme. Like the Mexican restaurants, if they want to have, Matarachi-looking stuff or whatever, and then the Roadhouse have their own. I think that's the way I understood it. Not John shaking his head. I think he was at the meeting too. So, but the main uniformity of the structure or whatever we're going to do, the blockades and that kind of stuff, that needs to be uniform. But if you want to put a certain decor at your restaurant, every restaurant's going to be different. I believe that's the way it was laid out.
And that's fair, and I think that some of those details and nuances could be worked through
Right.
through a resolution.
And that way
I
it
think that
gives
was
them
a
some
good
kind of
suggestion.
freedom.
Right.
Mr. Restuccio?
Can I ask another question about going down to Acacia? So my understanding is what we're talking about doing is, again, pretty common at Livermore, Pleasanton, and places like that, to where we'll allow some sort of dining in the parking spaces. But if you go down to Acacia, you're talking about Bank of Stockton may want to go out there and serve food. I mean, why wouldn't we go all the way down to where restaurants are? Or is it just in case restaurants come in?
It's just in case a restaurant would come.
Okay, I got you.
We don't have to change the ordinance.
Which is the same thing as Leo's saying. Why limit? Okay.
I think the majority of the restaurants were between Walnut Avenue and Norris. After that, I think the only other restaurant is Edie's Taco Shop. So the majority would just be within that 2 block. But I think for some of the same reasons
Okay,
you've been talking
I got
about,
it.
you just don't know if a restaurant will
I
come
got
in
it.
the future.
Mr. Parks?
Well, and the big thing I think we need to make with this ordinance is to where there's flexibility within it, to where we're not having to continually come back here and amend it and do those different things, that you guys have the freedom to change it on the fly if need be. If something's working, great. If it's not working, then I think it's better to have just kind of a broad scope and really some flexibility within there to work, so that way we can adjust to times. And we're not having to wait, as Leo said, 6 months, or not 6 months, but 60 days. Because then you could pass. I know that we put, it's open April to October. Well, if this process, if we all of a sudden decide we need to make a change in August, then we very well might be, out of luck for that particular year. Whereas there's still a lot of time left, but yet not enough time to pass a revision to the ordinance.
Yeah.
So I think that to me is one of my concerns, and I want to make sure it's broad enough to where you have the flexibility and the businesses have the flexibility to change on the fly to make sure it works.
Yeah, understood.
Okay, anybody else?
We going to do more comments on it?
Yeah, I want to, absolutely.
Okay,
Feel free.
I'll ask later then as we get further down.
Okay. So again, on page 107, we've touched on these issues where the permitted area of the use in subsection B at the top of page, close to the top of page 107 of your staff report, deals with the limit, the permitted areas of the use, and it says it shall be confined to the parking spaces located directly in front of the eating establishments. We have some restaurants that are right next to each other, and the issue is, obviously you don't want to take away the parking spaces from in front of other businesses, but is that too limited of a space? Are we giving ourselves enough room? Those are the kinds of questions that we asked as we were looking at this.
Yeah, and we talked about somehow opening up the parking around the back, where the other side of the freeway, cleaning that street up and opening that to parking and have some kind of transportation that would bring people back and forth, which would help under that circumstances. And I believe that the city is looking at purchasing property down there, and we're going to probably do something with that street anyway. It's not going to probably happen like right away, but that would definitely help with parking. If you had some kind of a transportation system to drop people off, bring them back and forth, and that type of thing. Well, you could walk too, but now it's not safe. It's not lighted up, and it's not. There's no sidewalks.
Well, there are, agreed. You see the period that we talked about that already between April and October. There are other design requirements, maintenance obligations, restrictions on where the alcohol can be served, and provisions for suspending any permits or revoking them, penalties for folks who don't comply, typical ordinance changes that we would be making. With respect to that chapter, those are the extent of our staff comments, and maybe there are others from council members.
The only other, just to expand a little bit on our conversation with the downtown businesses, two other things I just wanted to mention. One, in I don't know what section that is, I-4 regarding no overnight use. Right now, we say in the ordinance, no umbrellas, tables, or chairs they all shall be removed from the outdoor dining area at the end of each business day. I think it's very difficult, and I think some of the discussion was it was very difficult to remove everything. What we discussed was only removing the chairs. So late at night, people aren't going out there and sitting and using that facility. So that seemed to be acceptable to the businesses, just to remove the chairs at night. So that would be a possible change there. The item that probably had the most discussion in that meeting was regarding Section K, alcoholic beverage restrictions. Currently, K2 states that permissible alcoholic beverages in an outdoor dining area.
Sorry, Kevin, where are you at?
K2. That the alcoholic beverages shall be limited to beer and wine. So some of the feedback from the local businesses was they would like to see alcoholic beverages that essentially match their ABC permit.
Yeah, I see.
Well, that's what I talked about, so.
Well, I don't necessarily have an issue with it. as long as it's related to dining.
Right.
I don't think I want to see a table with 4 or 5 people out there and all they're doing is drinking. This is a dining situation, not a bar situation.
Right. And I think from the staff perspective, you know, we started this with beer and wine, and that's kind of how this all started and where we were at. So, you know, from staff, we did leave it beer and wine, but that was quite a bit of discussion that happened at the meeting.
I agree with Leo that there should be food on the table probably of some sort. I don't know.
It's just a tough thing to enforce. I mean, somebody goes in there and says, I'm just gonna have we're gonna go somewhere else for dinner, we're just gonna have a few drinks here first. There's not much you can do to stop that.
No, or people will go to dinner 45 minutes early because they want to sit and socialize. Now their table's ready and they, you know, in effect, you're saying you've got to leave it here. Most restaurants don't make you do that.
Right.
I'm not saying that we ought to do it, but by the same token, I don't want 5 people meeting in the bar, looking outside in the parking spaces and seeing an empty table and saying, well, hey, let's go out there and do it here, do it there. It's a nice night, let's do it. No, this is intended to be outside dining.
The difficulty for as you already anticipate, is it just how do you enforce that?
I know.
How do you make that? How do you once you let the cat out of the bag? How do you put the cat back in the
You
bag?
have to leave a certain amount of that up to the business owner. You know what I mean? And the police department, of course. But, I mean, if there's a problem, that's what the business is going to do. They're going to call the police department.
And it would be the same scenario. I mean, if there was somebody at the bar who was just
Drunk
getting
and out
hammered,
of control.
I mean, it would be the exact same thing. I mean, I think ultimately at the end of the day, if that's the case, the business is still held liable if they keep serving them drinks well after they
Right.
should.
But the one difference is, if they're inside the building and they decide to be a problem, it gets back to what we started with, it's contained. If somebody is sitting outside in the, potentially next to the middle of the street, and they decide to be a problem, all of a sudden, it's not contained. They are going to get a call. And I think if nothing else, we need to be prepared to, as a council, to deal with that if it happens. And by that, I mean, shut this whole thing off. People need to understand there's a limit to what we'll put up with. And it shouldn't be put on the police department to see if we get there or not. We're letting them do this. We better be ready to stop it.
Well, as you notice from the staff report, staff felt that at this level we were probably able to contain these kinds of events, these types of situations, and we were less confident of our ability to do that on a community dining event, which we can talk about separately. So,
But what will end up happening, and I agree, if somebody gets out of hand, everybody's going to lose their privilege. So it's going to be somewhat self-policing, I think, but it may not be successful.
yeah, and the difficulty you're going to have is if you say one person, one business misbehaves, we're going to shut the whole program down. As people have an expenditure. They've spent money on setting up for this, buying or renting equipment, whatever it is. It's going to be tough when they're all standing over there saying, I want to keep my ability to serve this just because the guy down the street didn't do it right.
But it's not uncommon to have group things that happen where everybody polices themselves and everybody makes sure everybody else complies.
Yeah.
I'm not saying.
You're right. You're right, and that's probably what will happen. We're just sort of, we're supposed to try to.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions about this?
Mr. DeGraff.
We have, if someone else wants to talk more about that, I'm fine with getting by. I had a comment on a section up higher in the document.
Oh,
But,
okay.
You mean we passed it?
yep,
Oh,
just barely.
Head on back.
H1 and 2. Yeah, I'm on. It's on the design phase. To me, it seemed a little bit of a conflict where it says the barriers basically, nothing can be attached permanently, but the barrier has to be collision proof. If it's not attached somewhat permanently, I don't think it's going to be collision proof. I mean, the barrier may be collision-proof itself, but if someone drives through the barrier, if it's not attached to the street somewhere, it's not going to do much of anything. It's kind of how I saw that. So it's just, maybe there's...
Become a projectile.
Yeah.
Safety issue.
Yeah, so maybe there's rewording, or maybe I'm not understanding the section properly, but...
No, you're right, and it's something that we talked about, and we looked at what Livermore had done. They have actually pretty substantial crash pots. And they look like flower pots, but they're 400-pound crash pots, and they are completely surrounding the fence itself. We were going to go take a look at exactly how they attach the barrier, if those crash pots are enough, but this was more of a kind of a performance that it has to be able to withstand an accident, but we also were going to look at Livermore a little bit, how they do it, but they do completely encompass the fenced area with the crash pots.
Jake?
Oh, I've already spoke.
Okay.
You're good.
So,
All right,
go on.
just moving real quickly through just want to make sure there are no council comments on the second part of this, which is the community amphitheater event, which I think we have set out the provisions starting at page 114 of your report. And we didn't have any internal comments or questions about it. I just wanted to make sure the council was aware of the highlighted provisions and happy to answer any questions from a staff standpoint on those. And then the final changes are to the chapters of the municipal code that deal with the use of alcohol or an open container prohibitions. Obviously, if we make these public areas accessible for alcohol events, we need to change those sections of the code, and that's what we've done. So with that, that's staff's report, and our recommendation is that you give staff further direction. I think some of the things we've heard tonight have been helpful for us in making this a bit more targeted, and I think we're going to go back and start looking for the items that need to be more flexible and able to change, and those that are more fundamental to the program that need to stay in the ordinance. So I like the idea of bringing back an ordinance with a resolution and maybe a set of guidelines that can be amended from time to time. So that would be our recommendation tonight.
Any more questions from the council? Okay, Mr. Zuber. Oh, I didn't see.
And we have folks that want to talk about it as well.
Yeah, I get it. And we'll open it up once
I've got a
everybody's...
few, and I'm just going to talk about the language itself. On page 111, I want to make sure I'm reading this right. If you're a category 1, which means you have less than 500 people, there are a series of activities that you can perform that this will not apply to, correct? It says exempt from this definition are private family events such as weddings, special parties, family reunions, and the like, which are held at the family residential property. Mm-hmm. But if you have more than 500 people for the same event, then this applies. Because category 2 doesn't have the exemptions. And the only difference that I can see between 1 and 2 is the number of people. I just want to make sure that that's what I'm seeing.
I'm making a note.
Okay, that's fine. And then at the bottom of the page, we don't have an amount for what it's going to cost to do this. You'll come up with something? Yes. Okay. On page 112, it's item 5.40.050. Number 4 says that one of the options for the city administrator in dealing with this is to put it on a council agenda. I guess, well, my question is, why is that an option? Because on the very next page, it says if they disagree with you, they can appeal it to the city council. Personally, I don't think that option ought to be there. You make a decision, and it's up to them to decide whether they're coming to us, not up to you to send it to us because you don't know what to do. Then we haven't, in my mind, we haven't done our job by giving you enough direction. Next page on 113, 5.40.070, on this appeal to the City Council. I would wonder if you might want to consider limiting what they can appeal. The fact that they don't agree with the city administrator's decision, if the city administrator has followed all the rules, to me, that's all the city council ought to consider in the appeal. Not whether we think the event's a cool thing, not whether we think the people are people that we know and it's something that we ought to do. If we set up a set of rules and the city administrator has followed the rules, that the decision should be made for the city council. That's just me.
Otherwise, change the rules.
Otherwise, change the rules.
Yeah.
But I don't like the idea that we have the ability to make exceptions all the time. That puts him in an ungodly position.
Yeah, and that goes more to the council needing to exercise restraint in its appeal powers.
Then the five of us need to hammer it out in public if we have to. But
No,
it should,
I agree. I'm just saying that I think I understand what you're saying, but you're saying as long as the city administrator follows the rules, there shouldn't be an appeal.
yeah, I think that there's a sentence
applicant-
that you add in there that the council will be limited to considering whether or not the city administrator appropriately applied the rules and regulations governing the application.
Right. Okay, I can see that. Because I think there's sometimes when an applicant's going to say, I know the city administrator thinks he's following the rules, but that's not the way I read the rules.
That's right,
which is
and
good. So-
then it's fair game.
Then it's fair game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Page 114, I've only got one more after this. 5.40.090A, what does that mean?
I was still scribbling. Sorry. 114.
A, it's 5.40.090A. As I read that, if anything else is going on anywhere at Mistland Sports Park, you can't have an alcohol-related event in the amphitheater. Is that what that means? I want to think about that.
Well, I think what we could do is say that no event shall be scheduled simultaneous with or combined, which in the judgment of the city administrator would conflict with.
I'm beginning to get more comfortable.
Something along those lines.
I understand that you don't want to contaminate other people, but if we're going to sit here and argue that the, how shall I put it? The good thing about the amphitheater is that it's self-contained. This paragraph makes it say, no, it's not, because it can have an adverse effect on anything else that's going on out there.
Right.
And that seems to be conflicting. I'm not sure saying it should be a free-for-all, but I think we need to figure out how we're going to handle that. I'd rather think about it now than after somebody's sitting out there all ticked off. And the only other one I have is the next page, 5.40.110, and I raised it the last time. It's that thing about protected speech. I want to be sure that that's right, because I sure don't want somebody coming in here and arguing they have a constitutional right to have an alcohol-related activity because it's covered by the First Amendment.
Yeah, I understand that. We've looked at that before. I think we're fine with the language.
Okay.
The only other one that I would raise is just, and we didn't talk about this at a staff level this morning, but item 6 on the section, just a few spaces above that. says that permissible alcoholic, no, sorry.
5.
6 is, for any use involving alcoholic beverages, no person under the age of 21 shall be permitted at the event. I just want the council to know that that's how it's drafted. It could be, it could limit the number of events that you would have out there that would, allow the use of alcohol. For example, if I want to take my kids to a restaurant downtown Ripon that serves alcohol out in the open area in front, I can do that, right? They can sit there, they're just not drinking. When we're talking about events at the amphitheater, we're saying everybody has to be 21 years or older in order for there to be alcohol there. And I think that's easier, and it makes it easier to contain that event, makes it easier to police that event. But I sense, my gut tells me that when we go to implement this, there will be some blowback on that. So just keep it in mind.
Mr. Parks?
Councilman Zuber, are you done?
I'm finished.
Okay. With that, I think that might be the last part we just talked about, not necessarily a death blow to this thing, but it will severely limit the attractiveness of the facility to it, as opposed to creating areas where you can, similar to the fair, where you can, go in and purchase a drink, and you've got to keep it within that specific area. Because I'm thinking of almost any type of concert, you're going to see a mix of age ranges in there. That's partly how they're going to make, the promoters and artists are going to make their revenue is by having a wide range in there. And if we limit it to a 21 and older event, I think that's going to be a problem with it. And I know Tamara isn't here tonight, but I think that might be another issue in the attractiveness with it. And I would much rather see an area where we cordon it off and say, okay, if you're going to get a drink, it's got to be within this specific area, and you've got to keep it within the area. I would much rather see us go that route than make it blanket. I know it's a little bit tougher to enforce and things like that, but if the goal of this thing is to attract events into town, then I think that that's something that's got to be addressed, because I don't think that part is going to work. I'm done.
You can take me off, because I was going to say that.
Okay.
That maybe we try isolating the service area and make them responsible for keeping kids out of there. That's basically
that's not uncommon.
That's basically what a restaurant has to do.
Yeah.
Kids can go there and eat dinner, but they can't go in the bar.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody, any more questions on this? If not, then I will open it up to the public. Does anybody from the public have any comments on this? Danielle, please state your name and address, please.
I think we all know the
Don't look at her.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and honorable council members. My name is Danielle Pierce. I reside at 1321 West 4th Street in Ripon. I would like to preface my remarks by saying that I am not speaking on behalf of any business or organization I may be associated with. Our remarks are based only on my personal perspective. I have lived in the city since I was in elementary school, and I'm excited about the prospect of outdoor dining on Main Street. My husband and I enjoy eating outside, and I have always desired for this type of dining experience to be available to us here in Ripon. Over the years, I've shared the idea with various people around town, and have even taken my own pictures of how other cities have put this together to allow the dining on the street. And I'm happy we're finally taking steps to give our downtown restaurants an opportunity to make this happen. Over the years, I've taken a great interest in downtown and the success of the businesses there. I have been a member of the Chamber Downtown Committee for as long as I can remember, and have worked on various projects to enhance downtown. Even though I don't own my own business, I feel like I have a vested interest in our community, and especially downtown. While I love the idea of outdoor dining, I am not sure that adding alcohol to the experience is necessary. But I can understand the desire of those who would like to be able to have a glass of wine or a beer with their meal outdoors. I do, however, have grave concerns about expanding that to other forms of alcohol. I think it's important for us to remember what makes Ripon Ripon, the jewel of the valley, where people feel safe and that it's a wonderful place to raise a family. I believe that there are little nuances about Ripon that may not necessarily be measurable, but do reflect our values. I've heard people say that Ripon needs to get with the times. I'm sorry. And while at the same time, I hear people say how much they love Ripon, how quaint and safe it is, and what a wonderful place it is to raise a family. I'm afraid that getting with the times and allowing full bar service on Main Street could be a step towards fraying the fabric of what we're about. Over the years, I have attended many city council meetings where I have heard statements from council members saying that we don't do things just because other cities do. We do what is best for Ripon regardless of what other cities do. Bars are available inside several of the restaurants for those who wish to partake, with or without their meal. Some restaurants also have dining available on their property in the back of their restaurants, which can also accommodate other types of alcohol besides beer or wine. When the revision of the alcohol ordinance was proposed last year, I attended a meeting where I took notes that Chief Ormonde, and Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, he reported that one of the top 3 violations resulting in arrests in the city was public intoxication, with it making up 10% of arrests in the past 8 years. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Thank you. There is additional work associated with these arrests for our police officers. One of the things I love about Ripon is that whenever or for whatever I call the police department, they respond to the call in a timely manner. I am hopeful we will not implement something that would take away from their time that would change this. I also urge you to follow the staff recommendation regarding the separate dining event that was originally proposed by the Alcohol Ordinance Committee. And I urge you to follow the recommendation based on all the reasons cited in the staff letter that went out to you. I have heard many people refer to this section of the proposal as a farm-to-fork dinner, which sounds like an elegant dining event. However, there is no stipulation in the proposal that that is what the dining event would be or what organization would even be putting the event on. For these reasons, I would agree with their recommendation that this not be included in the revised ordinance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. At least the last part of that we have pulled out. Correct. Right? So that concern is being basically taken care of at this point in time, and we will renegotiate that at a later time, or if that's the right terminology. And yeah, I mean, she's got it's legitimate, everything that Danielle says. I will say, personally, either way, but a lot of the restaurants, the bar/restaurants, whatever you want to call them, they really wanted it to be opened up. Now, whether that should waive our decision or not, I mean, I'd like to say what everybody else's thought on that. Does it just having beer and wine versus,
I don't know if it's a question or a suggestion. I think from the discussion, you've sort of got an idea of the issues. What if in that one, we're not making a decision tonight. Can you draft it? I hate to make more work, but what the heck? You'll give us a bill anyway. If you drafted it both ways so that we have a chance to think about it and talk about it some more, and then we can decide which way we want to do it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the common theme that we're hearing is that we need to, keep the big stuff in the ordinance and take the more detailed stuff and put it in the resolution. And we can do that first, and then.
I think, to me, that's the important thing, is to get the framework in the ordinance and then put the details in a resolution, and that thing you can change every month until we get it right.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we can move on, right? You got
Right,
it?
staff will take the direction tonight and bring this back.
Okay. So with that, we'll close ordinances and move on to discussion items. Groundwater Sustainability Agency formation. City Council to consider participation in the South San Joaquin County Irrigation District GSA and not elect to be a separate GSA at this time. Kevin?
I'll handle that one, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Do you mind putting up the presentation, Dan? So, as we've talked about, I believe a couple other times, I think I've sent the council some informational emails about this, what is termed the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, passed in 2014. We're nearing the time when it's you have to make a decision if how you want to move forward with creating or participating in what they refer to as a groundwater sustainability agency. Before we get into that, because this is an important issue, I thought I would provide just a little bit more background for the council and the public. With the passing of SGMA is what they refer to it as. It does require a formation of a groundwater sustainability agency or multiple agencies for our groundwater basin. It does require completion of a groundwater sustainability plan, which is essentially a roadmap to sustainability and meeting a definition of sustainability by the legislation that was passed. Requires the GSAs to manage groundwater basins through the implementation of those sustainability plans. And it also provides the GSA with the authority to collect fees and conduct enforcement actions. There can be multiple GSAs and multiple plans within the sub-basin. I have a map here in a little bit to show you what our sub-basin looks like, but there is coordination required between those different plans and agencies. The GSA is formed from one or more local agencies with water supply, water management, or land use responsibility. So essentially with that, the city of Ripon can elect, if we choose to become our own GSA. We could also participate with another GSA, like what was discussed in the staff report with SSJID, who is moving forward with implementing a GSA, and you would do that through either a joint power agreement or a memorandum of agreement. If you don't form a GSA by June 30th, 2017, it results in state intervention. They're essentially the backstop in this process. This is the basin, the sub-basin that we are located within. We are actually number 12 at the bottom of that basin, and so it goes up essentially to north of Lodi. Number 2 on there is City of Lodi. And then I'm just trying to give you a couple landmarks here. And the pink on there to the left is Tracy. So it's a very large basin. There's close to 20 different agencies that you would have to coordinate with. So if everyone decided to be their own GSA, you're coordinating with 20 different agencies. Same with the plans. You'd have to coordinate that. So it does become very difficult to achieve the sustainability if everyone was individual, went forward with this on their own. One of the concerns, and it's talked about in the staff report, and I think every city, every entity that has the authority to create a GSA realizes the importance of this decision is because the GSA does have a lot of powers through the legislation. They're able to control groundwater extraction by regulating, limiting, or suspending extractions from existing or proposed groundwater wells. They are able to impose spacing requirements on new groundwater well construction, as well as requiring extractors to operate wells on a rotational basis. And they are able to acquire or augment local water supplies to enhance the sustainability of the groundwater basin. So these are just some of the powers, but I think from us and us meeting the water demand of our customers, the residents and businesses of Ripon. These are important parts of the discussion in deciding whether or not to create our own groundwater sustainability agency. Just a little background in some of the discussions that we've been having and some of the progress that has happened. SSJID in October 2015 did elect and filed with the state to become a GSA. Their filing did include Ripon, Escalon, and Manteca. Fairly quickly after that, during the 90-day notice period, the San Joaquin County strategically decided to also submit an application. What their goal in doing that was essentially to stop the process, give everyone an opportunity to make their decisions and discuss the governance of the GSAs. That really is one of the most important issues, is how they're governed. So to essentially stop the clock, and SSJID was not the only one who was moving forward with that. There was a number of other agencies that were doing that within the sub-basin. So as mentioned in the staff report, there really is two options for Ripon. One is the city could elect and file to become our own GSA. We would need to start that process by March 1st in order to meet the June 30th, 2017 deadline, or the city could choose to not elect to become a GSA and instead negotiate to be part of either the county GSA, which they're interested in moving forward with their own GSA, or the SSJID GSA. And that would be through either a joint powers agreement or a memorandum of agreement, as we discussed before. And, I could say from our perspective, and Tom, you could add into this, we've talked a lot about this and the what ifs and what this all means. I think one of the challenges that Ripon and all the cities have is the unknown. No one knows what the groundwater sustainability plan looks like, what are the requirements of that plan. Right now I think all indications are there is going to be one plan for the entire basin. As they start moving forward in that, I think the desire of all the entities within the basin is to develop a consensus of how to move that plan forward. I don't know if that's going to be possible. I don't know if there is going to be able to reach consensus, and if they're not, eventually people are going to go off on their own and create their own plans. So there's a lot of unknowns as you go forward, and I think as Tom and I have discussed this, I think one of the things that we believe is there's not a right or wrong answer on how you go forward. I think either way you go forward, you certainly could make a decision to change course in the future. So, for instance, if you did decide to participate in the SSJID GSA, and once you see the plan itself and the requirements of the plan and what goes into the plan, maybe there is a decision down the road to create our own. But right now, I think from staff perspective, it didn't make sense to move forward with SSJID, mostly from the opportunity of combining resource within the South County. SSJID has been a good partner, but also there's opportunities to find ways and work together to find projects that help us meet the intent of Sigma. So with that, Tom, if you want to add anything else to the discussion.
There are a lot of things that are not clear in this legislation. One of the things that is clear is that ultimately there will be, for every basin, and basins don't respect county lines or city limits, of course, but for every basin there will be a groundwater sustainability plan that will be put together at some point. And whether all of the individual GSAs or whether there's a consolidated effort, at the end of all of this, somebody's going to have to come through and reconcile the various plans, the various draft plans that are put together into one GSP. That is going to be just an enormous effort. And I don't think anybody really understands whether the ultimate groundwater sustainability plan is going to be, on one end, advisory, as you move forward, an accountability document, or at the other end of the spectrum, a regulatory document, a very heavily regulatory document. We don't know that at this point. We know what the goals and parameters are, but we don't know what the ultimate product's going to look like. So when we figure out what form of entity and how to proceed, the one thing we know is that no matter how big or small our group is, at the end there will be a coordinated groundwater sustainability plan that someone at the state level is going to have to come through and help the basin achieve. So we see that there are some risks associated with being an individual groundwater sustainability agency, a GSA. One of the risks is if the wheels fall off of the regional GSP that you're a part of, you still, for your city, have an obligation to prepare a groundwater sustainability plan. And that's an enormously expensive and complex effort. So you're up against deadlines, you have staff time. So that's the reason for proceeding with some caution at this point as more facts and more information become known about this process.
Jake, you got some questions?
I, for one, am shocked that the state is being vague and nobody knows what the implications are of this going to be. But Tom, for us non-legal eagles, what is the difference for you anyway, between a JPA or an MOA? Are there any significant differences between the two?
Yeah, basically an MOA is an agreement between agencies to proceed in a particular direction. A JPA, on the other hand, has more flexibility. It can incur debt. It's more or less those bodies are forming a separate entity, right?
Okay.
They share a common power, but they can now create, because they have the same common power, they can branch off into a separate agency. They can, as I said, buy and hold real property, enter into debt, enter into contracts, and so it's more or less a legal entity. It's like a joint venture versus a partnership.
Okay, so there are some significant differences between the two of them.
Yes, there are, but we have to decide whether those differences are important enough to go through the trouble of creating a JPA and having all of the attendant baggage that goes with it. So, for example, if you don't think your two agencies or 3 or 5 agencies that are getting together to do this effort are going to need to acquire real property, are going to incur debt, those kind of more complex things that you would imagine between really big agencies down south, for example, versus what we're trying to do up here, you might say, well, we don't really need all the bells and whistles of a JPA. We can go proceed under a memorandum of agreement instead and use a more streamlined approach. And we've had conversations on those levels as well.
Okay. I want to make sure, because I was reading that as that they were both fairly similar, so I'm glad to know that there's some distinct differences between the two.
There are, Jake, and I guess the one thing I would say is that in its execution, we may end up doing very similar things. So we need to avail ourselves of all the bells and whistles.
Okay. Kevin, and then just for my own information, what would you be looking at to do your own, for the city of Ripon to form its own GSA time-wise? Are you thinking that could staff handle that in-house, or would you have to go out to a consultant and go that route in order to do everything that you need to do?
I think as far as participating in the meetings, staff would be involved in that. On the county-wide level or the basin-wide level, staff would be participating there, coordinating as part of that coordination. But the actual work in itself to prepare the plan is substantial. So we would be looking for a consultant to come in and do that work.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I've got questions. I don't even know how to develop my questions, quite frankly, because it's just there's 1,000 questions to be asked. But just a couple of, this kind of reminds me when we talked about whether or not we should have gotten into the SSGID water system. Nobody knew what it was going to cost, whether we should get in, whether we should stay out. At the end of the day, we didn't do it, and is it right or wrong? I have no idea. And it seems like this is kind of the same. But just a couple observations so I can understand this correctly. So the GSA's got some really broad authority. I understand not forming our own GSA. I kind of get that because that could be very expensive. And why do a dual, if Manteca and Ripon and Escalon all become GSAs, we're all doing kind of the same work. It kind of doesn't make any sense for all of us to spend the amount of money. But what I'm concerned about in the way it kind of reads, if we do join a GSA, and for me, if we joined a GSA, it'd be something like SSGID, something pretty close. But it says a GSA can exit at any point. It also provides an opportunity for a GSA to exit at any point in the process. we wouldn't be a GSA. So if we're part of that GSA and we vote we want to stay in and somebody else decides to get out, we have no control over our own destiny. Is that correct? If we're part of that GSA?
Yeah, but if you're saying if we get kicked out of the GSA that we're in? And we're
No,
not
it says
in our
that this,
separate
it says it also provides an opportunity for a GSA to exit at any point. The GSA itself, I guess, is the way it reads.
Right, if you have, so if South San Joaquin forms a GSA, which includes Ripon, Manteca, and Escalon
Right.
in the district, and they then go into an MOA with the folks up north in the county.
Right.
And they don't like the way that it's going, that GSA can withdraw and then proceed to do its own GSP. By the same token, Ripon, as a member, if it was its own GSA, Ripon could drop out of a larger GSA or an MOA arrangement and choose to become its own GSA at any point in the process.
Right, but if we become part of a GSA and we're not a GSA ourselves, and the majority vote to get out of the GSA and we want to stay in, then now we've got, but then we'd be the whole GSA.
No,
Yeah,
as long as there's one other one, you wouldn't be.
but if
As long as
everybody
there's
else
anybody
votes
else-
to
as
get
long as
out,
anybody
that's
else-
what,
Then it's gone.
As long as there's anybody else-
right, so we're out on, exactly, so we're out on our own ourselves, so we're back to not being
Back to
part of it
square
anyway.
one, yeah.
Okay, that's why I read it, and I just want to make sure that's
Okay.
clear. Yeah, okay, I got 1,000 more questions, and I don't even know what they all are yet, because it's just too complicated. There's just too many pieces, and nobody knows what the answer, nobody knows what the costs are. I mean, if we know that if we do it ourselves, it's gonna cost money. If we do it jointly with somebody else, we have no idea how they're gonna allocate those costs out. I mean, but, man, we have to make these decisions by June?
No.
Needs to be formed by June.
The only decision we have to make by June is if we're gonna be our own GSA or if we're gonna do it with somebody else. That's it.
Yeah.
Right, so we have to make the decision by June.
But in July, you can change it.
Okay, yeah,
And really, you have to make a decision by March, because there is a 90-day notice period ahead of that, so.
are we gonna have a whole bunch more better information, much more concise by March? No. Well, I'm just saying, this is the typical ridiculous stuff we have to deal with.
Mike, you're an optimist.
Mr. Zuber,
Crap. Oops.
At this point, do we know how many of the 22 agencies that were on your map are planning to go it alone?
It's still not clear. All the agencies, we meet on a monthly basis, and there's updates about where everyone's at. But it's a fluid situation, I think, where they're at right now. They've actually passed the deadline when they wanted everyone to have coordinated the boundaries. They allow no overlap, so you have to be very specific about your boundaries, and we've exceeded that deadline. So we have a meeting tomorrow. I would hope to hear a little bit more about where they're at, but my sense is there's going to be on the order of between 5 to 10, probably closer to 5 GSAs within the sub-basin.
That are some combination of the 20, because
Yes,
according to what I've read in the paper, Manteca's decided to go their own way.
they have.
Escalon's decided to go their own way.
They have.
So at this point, if we combine with SSGID, it's the two of us.
Yes.
But anywhere along the line, Manteca and Escalon and Lodi and anybody else could decide, this is crazy, we don't want to do this, we want to go with you and come in. So the thing could be entirely different.
And they've made the decision that it's worth the risk of
Right.
having to do their own GSP at some point. I don't necessarily look at that risk the same way.
I don't agree with,
evaluate it the same way.
I don't think it's worth the risk at this point.
Nobody knows enough
Yeah.
to know what to do.
Councilman DeGraff.
There we go. I was just going to say, I think it's better off, from what I've seen, it's better off to join together, have a combined effort, building the plan and doing it, with combined resources. You're essentially going to create the same thing twice if you do it separate from SSJD, which Manteca and Escalon, if they want to pull out, they're going to have to pay to do their own. They're going to have to pay to do the full thing. Same thing we'd do jointly. So I think cost-wise, it's going to be more effective to do it with more people together. But there's obviously a lot of unknowns. Us in the consulting world at work, we don't know what's going on with it still. Everybody says it's a learning process. So moving forward from the city's perspective, I think it's better off to do it jointly. That's just my perspective.
Point? Yeah. Mr. Parks?
Has SSG, and I apologize if you've mentioned this before, but has SSGID expressed a level of expectation of you, other than just attending meetings and contributing, things like that? Did they want anything else in terms of, financial or time commitments or things like that from you to join with them? Because I would agree with Councilman DeGraff. I do think it's a good idea to potentially partner with them, especially considering the fact that they're really, in addition to yourself and Mr. Zeidebar, the experts on this. So
The discussions we've had, a lot of those would get worked out through the MOA.
Okay.
And it would start defining the responsibility between the city and SSJD, how we go forward.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if they had said, hey, this is what we're thinking, doing a JPA, you would take over this area and we would do this, or we'll kind of do it for you and you just contribute type of thing, or, get an idea of what their level of expectation is.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's going to get worked out as we continue to discuss MOA.
Okay, I just have 2 points. One is when San Joaquin Irrigation District put their GSA together, did we give them the right to use our name in their GSA?
No.
So how do they do that?
So they can do that, and they can assign a boundary, which is what they did. They did their service area. But as part of that, there's a 90-day process where they get input. So that's where we would have had a say whether we wanted to be included in that or not. And but they never got too far down that process. Like I mentioned, the county submitted an overlap.
Okay, because this is the first I've really kind of heard of this, and I'm like, well, I don't remember us saying it was okay. So, okay, all right, I get that. Now, my next point would be when you look at the overall big picture, you got Lodi, you got Tracy, and Manteca, and then you got little old Ripon down here. And if you're part of this GSA, I've been there before, Washington, D.C. and stuff, where we get thrown under the bus and the bigger boys got charge of everything and get everything. What would be would that be a problem in this GSA to be combined with all those? Because I don't want to see my community thrown under the bus like it was, and I've seen it happen before.
So as all the entities within the sub-basin, as they move forward with the hope of creating one plan, every GSA is going to have a seat at that table. And the hope is that they could move forward on a consensus base. I don't know if that's going to be possible or not. But that's their hope. They're hoping that, and their hope is that every
what my concern is.
Very much so, and their hope is that every GSA, is able to participate. But the reality is there are some very large agencies. I think you could term it the haves and the have-nots. There's agencies with water and with money, and there's others that are not. And there's some very difficult discussions to be had as this moves forward, and you begin implementing Sigma and really getting down to meeting the sustainability goals of Sigma.
Like I personally don't have a problem with combining with the South San Joaquin Irrigation District because they've always been would deal with us in good faith. Now you want to talk about the other communities surrounding us? We've all been there. They don't care about us, and they will. And that I would think we wouldn't want to be in the bigger picture. If we could contain it, that would be my suggestion. Okay, Councilman DeGraff.
Yeah, to your point about whether you're at a disadvantage being on your own or being together, one positive about being with SSJID is they are a net positive when it comes to groundwater contribution with their surface water, where if we are by ourselves, we are a major net negative. So we're at a serious disadvantage by ourselves based on water usage and where we're pulling our water from. So that's one thing to consider.
Good point. Mr. Zuber.
I just have two things. One, your comment about being thrown under the bus and other people's attitude towards us. Part of that's our fault, not this council's fault, but it's partly because of the way Ripon has dealt with other people in this county in the past. And so they have long memories, and I run into that every once in a while when I have discussions with people. I think it's changing. In fact, I know it's changing. The only other question I would ask is, if we're going to get into a discussion that involves water, would you rather do it by yourself? Or would you rather have SSJID sitting beside you while you're having that discussion?
I think we want to be aligned with people who share our interests, okay?
And the
that-
experts. They're the experts.
Well, yeah, but, you know, from a city standpoint, especially one that relies on groundwater primarily to serve water to its residents, we want to make sure, we know what we don't want the GSP to say at the end of the day, and that is that some other agency besides Ripon, besides this council, is going to decide where and whether and how you drill wells to provide water to your residents, and whether you can grow. That's really the main. If you were to ask staff, what's our number one concern, Kevin, am I right? That's probably our number one concern, because we have a general plan that goes out to 2035, 2040. We have a municipal service review that's been approved by LAFCO that calls for us to provide water to our residents. And if this plan comes into being and says you've got to curtail that, you've got to come up with some other source of water or you can't grow, then that's a big problem for us. So we know what result we don't want at the end of the day. The question is, how do we align ourselves and who do we align ourselves with to make sure that doesn't happen? What gives us the greatest possibility of achieving our objectives? And from what I can see so far, first, a lot of consultants and a lot of lawyers are being paid a lot of money to advise caution, and that's what they're doing, because nobody knows for sure. There's not enough. As complex as this is, there's not enough flesh on it to tell us what the answer is going to be. And so right now, you know, there's a lot of meetings that are going on. It's kind of like, reminds me when when you volunteer to drive kids on a field trip, who's riding with who, right? As soon as they find out that this person's riding with this person, then everybody wants to ride with that person, and nobody wants to ride with the other person, and it's just people are chasing their tails right now. We're trying to keep on top of it, and we're trying to keep the objective in mind, which is to preserve our local autonomy.
Mr. DeGraff.
I would say another thing to consider moving forward is the GSP, the actual plan, the requirements for meeting sustainability. The plan takes effect in 2020, but the actual requirement for being sustainable is 2040. It's at the end of the life of the plan. So we have 20 years from 2020 to meet the goal of sustainability. So there's a lot of time.
You will still be here.
We might have to
Let's put this off.
I'm not saying to put it off, but what I'm saying is that there's plenty of time. You know, if we within the year we say, "Oops, we made a mistake," it's not going to be critical that we made the mistake today, and then a year from now we're still developing the plan over the next 5 years. So it's not critical that we make the absolute right decision right now.
So are you looking for us tonight to indicate to you whether we want to be our own or go with SSGID? That's what you want?
Are you going to make a motion, Leo?
I'm going to make a motion that we approach SSGID about forming common GSA. I mean, that we do
A joint
we
GSA.
join this together. How we do it, I'll leave that up to the administrators to figure
It'll
out.
involve either preparing an MOA or
Right.
less likely a JV.
I'll second that. I think that's the right move.
Passes 5-0. And we'll close. That was, moving on to discussion item 7B. Authorize staff to revise Chapter 8.24 Cultivation and Possession of Medical Marijuana and Chapter 9.10 Medical Marijuana Dispensaries of the Ripon Municipal Code and bring back to the next City Council meeting for first reading and introduction. Who's the marijuana expert around here? Chief?
Tonight it's me. Mr. Mayor, Honorable City Council, if you recall back in January of this year, we passed an emergency ordinance that banned medical marijuana cultivation, dispensaries, and delivery. As of November 8th, the Adult Use of Marijuana Act passed, which legalized recreational marijuana. And the amendments to the ordinances in front of you will get us in compliance with the new law. And then certain aspects of it, we have some control over what we can prohibit and what we can allow within our city. Proposition 64, to paraphrase, makes it legal for persons 21 years of age and over to possess up to an ounce or 28.5 grams of marijuana, up to 8 grams of concentrated marijuana or marijuana product. Also, persons 21 years of age or over to cultivate marijuana for recreational purposes. Persons 21 years of age or over to smoke or ingest marijuana products. And for persons 21 years of age or over to possess, transport, purchase, obtain, manufacture marijuana accessories. So what we are asking for tonight as a discussion item with no action requested is for guidance from the council to what extent the council wishes to regulate the personal cultivation of marijuana within the city, where the regulation is permitted by state law, and to what extent it wishes to regulate the opening or establishment and operation of businesses engaged in commercial marijuana activities within the city. Again, both amendments to the ordinance are in draft form and are attached to your packets. The recommendations are to amend Chapter 8.24 of the Ripon Municipal Code to prohibit all outdoor cultivation of marijuana for the personal use, establish limitations on indoor cultivation, and require permits for all indoor marijuana growers. And then also to amend Chapter 9.10 of the Ripon Municipal Code to prohibit the opening, establishment, and operation of all businesses engaged in commercial marijuana activities, which would coincide with our current ordinance. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can.
I have a question. So, can people walk down the street smoking pot now?
No, and I can actually, if the council wishes, and maybe for just public information, I can read off a list of items that are still prohibited.
Yes, please, thanks.
It'd be smoking or ingesting marijuana in public places, except at a business where expressly permitted to do so. We currently do not have any of those within our city limits. Smoking marijuana in any place where smoking tobacco is unlawful. Smoking marijuana within 1,000 feet of a school, daycare center, or youth center. Possessing an open container or open package of marijuana or marijuana products while driving, operating, or riding in a passenger seat or passenger compartment of a motor vehicle, boat, vessel, aircraft, or vehicle used for transportation. Possession, smoking, or ingesting of marijuana or marijuana products upon the grounds of a school, daycare center, youth center while children are present. Manufacturing concentrated cannabis using a volatile solvent. That process usually uses compressed aerosols, which are dangerous, and you'll see fires being reported occasionally through the news media at different locations where they actually have labs where they're producing this concentrate. Smoking or ingesting marijuana or marijuana products while driving or operating the vehicle, or smoking or ingesting marijuana or marijuana products while riding as a passenger in a motor vehicle, and there's other items that were previously stated. So basically, what you would do is you would treat, we tell our staff, the officers that are out enforcing the law, to treat it like an open container of alcohol. If you can't drive in a vehicle with an open container, you can't drink alcohol while you're driving a motor vehicle, you can't walk down the streets drinking a can of alcohol, or so you treat it the same way.
Okay.
And isn't it true? See, a person cannot get marijuana from another person unless they give it to them. If they sell it to them, they're breaking the law right now.
That is correct. It's very difficult to enforce, as you could guess the reasons behind that. But yes, you can give it, but you cannot sell it person to person. Same thing with marijuana paraphernalia.
Do they consider bartering the same thing as selling?
You can't receive any type of compensation.
Any compensation? Okay. Okay.
That all changes on January 1st of 2018.
Yeah.
How about the mail order?
I'm sorry?
That's a federal one.
I thought we talked about this before, where people were actually ordering on the internet. They'd ship it to your house.
People can't do that. It is illegal to do that, but you.
Is what?
It is illegal to do that still, but you can.
So that's not changed either.
No, that hasn't changed. The proposed in the ordinances, the transportation, basically, you can go retrieve your recreational marijuana from a dispensary outside of our city. You can transport it back to your residence. You can transport it to a friend's house. You can transport it to another location. You cannot deliver it. You cannot deliver it. The difference between the delivery is where you're taking it to a point within our city to sell for profit.
So the easier way to explain this is tell us, it sounds to me like not a whole lot has changed. It would be easier just to explain what has changed. It doesn't sound
Now
like.
you can treat marijuana like alcohol.
Yeah.
You can possess it without a doctor's recommendation at this point, and you can't smoke it within a private residence, private facility that doesn't prohibit it.
There you go.
It'll be legal now.
I don't smoke marijuana. I had my fingers crossed.
So this is going to come back for first reading next month? Yes. Okay.
So
You wrote it to comply with the law, right?
we're not voting on this today, right?
No.
We're just moving on?
Yeah. Just one question for Chief and City Attorney Terpstra. How is it viewed then if it's transported across state lines? Is it still a federal? So say it goes from Arizona into California.
Well,
It's still illegal federally.
Yes.
There's a state exemption when the proposition passed, so it would only be within the confines of the state that these laws would apply.
So say you get somebody who's not the brightest bulb in the package who says, yeah, I bought this in Arizona and came over here. Would then, I'm just trying to get an idea of the scope that you are going to have to be involved with. It's like, well, yeah, you have it here, but you committed a federal crime.
Yeah, we would document the information and forward it to our partners at the FBI's office.
Okay. We'll close that part of the meeting and move on to council, committee, and task forces. Okay, that's me.
You're the task force?
Well, I'm they want me to make some changes and decisions, so I've passed out. Everybody should have a binder.
Nope, don't have it.
If you don't have one, you can have mine. Is that what you need?
I did not take yours.
So it's kind of like a wish list of what committees you would like to be on, and maybe they're pretty self-explanatory, and then ultimately I will make that decision. And I don't know that, obviously we have a new councilman, so we're going to give him a lot of the really good jobs that I got 12 years ago.
He's supposed to get 40 out of the 49ers, eh?
So just don't worry about, Daniel, about putting anything on there. I got your stuff under control. With that,
How soon do you want these back?
let's say, you should be able to do it by the end of the week, right? Or next week. Let's say next week. Next week, Trish? Okay. Turn them into Tricia, and then by the 21st? Okay. I should have let her say all that stuff. Okay. So with that, I believe we're done, right?
No.
We got the,
Now you do department heads. then
oh,
city
okay.
council,
I
and you
lost
still
my,
have- You still have
I lost my,
successor
the
agency.
redevelopment, I know. I lost my way in here. What do I do with my paperwork?
I don't know. What do you need?
Where I'm at.
Here.
Well, the
That's
end of
the
the,
successor agency.
right, I got that, but I'm trying to figure out where I'm at right here.
No, that's not it.
Where's my paperwork go?
Here. Well, I don't want to give you mine because it's got my notes on it, but that's where you're at.
Okay. Department heads reports. Chief?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Honorable City Council, and our members of our general public. I just have two items to report on. One's an update on our fireworks ordinance, Councilman Zuber had inquired this a few months ago. We are now, all of these citations have been adjudicated by our city attorney's office. Attorney Ripon has been to court and worked out pleas in abeyance to the violations. What they are pleading to is a $600 fine and 16 hours of community service. All of the persons that were subject to the site have paid their fine, and we are still waiting the completion of community service hours.
How many were there altogether?
There were 6 total that we cited. Sometimes there's other charges that are on the citations, and which would preclude the city attorney from handling all of them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The second one, I just wanted to do a quick update on our drug canine. I've had some questions asked about what the plan is for the canine since the Proposition 64 passing, since the dog is certified in detection of marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine. There are still situations where marijuana is prohibited, especially on our school campuses, people or persons under the age of 21. So we're going to be utilizing the dog in those circumstances still. The dog is still with Officer Mike Perry and is being deployed on a regular basis. So just an update on that.
Ted?
Yes, sir. Wanted to report on our water usage for November. It was down by 47%.
Whoa, that's because it rained all month.
I think that helped. Yes. Yeah. So,
That's compared to 2013.
2013.
Wow.
Last year at this time we were at 34%. This month or in November it was 47. So we've done something right. We have issued 240 door hangers, reminding folks that they're out of compliance, and we've sent out 1 penalty assessment for the month of November.
Only one?
Only 1.
Jeez.
It wasn't me either.
Could have been, though.
I turned mine off.
And we have installed two new signs to remind everybody that we're at a 1 day a week watering day. So I'm hoping that'll get some more attention. And that's it.
Mr. Stevens? And Ken? I'm not trying to, you always massacre that. Yes, we have. Mr. Parks?
Nothing to report.
Mr. Do I go? Yeah, do I go to you next, or do I go by seniority?
I don't know how you do
We should
that.
normally-
Who's number 4?
I'm number 5.
Yeah.
He's number.
Should have been
I'm
first.
number 4. So-
Mr. DeGraff,
I've got nothing, thank you.
you sure? This is your big chance. Mr. Zuber?
I got a list.
Oh, good.
They're quick, though. First of all, I'd like to commend the city staff for the job that was done on the Main Street overlay. It looks really good. I mean, a heck of a lot better than it looked down there before you started, so thank you. Also, in case anybody has noticed, there was I think it was on an agenda a couple months ago where we approved the McDonald's installing a bench in town for Mrs. McDonald, who her husband was a teacher at the high school, and it's over by the senior center, and it looks really nice. I got a picture if you want to look at it, but you ought to stop by and take a look. They did a really nice job. Yep, she wouldn't have wanted it any other way. Where are we on the tech upgrade for this wonderful room?
There's several phases of the upgrade. The projector, we're still waiting on a final determination on what the county has done and to kind of get a feel if we want to move that direction. We did settle that we're both kind of looking at the same vendor and the same projector project. So the thought was to kind of let them move forward and see how it works for them, and then move forward there. The digital boardroom with the agendas, that's a project that's still moving forward. We're communicating with the vendor. to find out some specifics on how we want to implement it and move forward. Hopefully within mid-January, or I should say, should be ready to go mid-January and be ready to roll for the February meeting.
I'm going to ask again in mid-February if we're not doing this.
I would expect nothing less.
Okay. I would like, in the not-too-distant future, to have a discussion about fee waivers, process, that sort of thing. I think we need to talk about that, how it's done, everything, what the rules are now, what the rules should be, that sort of thing. And at some point, I'd like to get some background information on our streetlight process. I know we had an election, 10 years ago? So they're now ours. But now I find out some of them aren't ours. Some of them are still PG&E's. And so some of them we can deal with and some they have to deal with. I've had some frustration expressed to me by some people about streetlights being out and not being fixed and that sort of thing. And I just want to understand so that I can deal with it. We probably all ought to understand. Last, why are we having a special meeting next week?
I think initially when we were looking at this agenda, we thought it was going to be a longer agenda, 3 to 4 hours. So we were trying not to overload one agenda with a number of
confidence in your counsel.
If they only would have known.
I told him Jake wasn't in charge no more than I would get through this meeting.
So, yeah, so it was just not to overload one agenda, and so that was the reason.
Do we know what we're going to talk about?
Yes. There is I think there's 3 or 4 items. There is a couple different donations that are being offered. Tony Mislin is offering a donation. A drone is being offered to the city to accept both those donations. And actually, there's one more, I think, from the city of Tracy and the police department have discussed swapping some equipment. So we wanted to get council feedback on that. So I think and then James Pease had a CMAQ grant application and some projects that
some of the stuff that was on this one that all of a sudden
those
didn't
same
show
items.
up.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
So we don't need a meeting, you just went over it.
Vice Mayor Merstuccio, sorry.
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you and welcome you to the council.
Thank you.
And second, well, maybe second and third, but about the PG&E lights. Yeah, I have someone I live with that had the same complaint about the PG&E lights, and that isn't fun when you live with them. But I also want to tell James, where'd he go? Was he not? He wasn't here the whole time? Okay. We had an overlay done in our neighborhood, and I know a lot of neighborhoods did, and we've heard different things. And I will tell you, the people that came out did a very nice job, very professional job. The neighbors were very pleased with the turnout on our street, and they complimented the city for it, the way they shut the roads down around Spring Creek and all the other areas. So please tell James that from our perspective in my neighborhood, people were pleased.
I appreciate that, both comments, and I'll pass those on to James and the contractor.
Okay, I thought you weren't going to speak. You said you were passing. So anyway, it's on me now. I just wanted to say that if any of you seen or didn't come to the Christmas parade, it was very, very nice. There was a lot of entries. The police department did a wonderful job. All the police officers, not all of them, there was obviously some on work. They decorated their car. They had that, what do you call that big old tank thing?
Armored vehicle.
It's an armored vehicle.
That thing was completely wrapped as a gift, and it really looked sharp. And they did a great job. I was in the parade in my vehicle, which
we noticed.
I was very
It was
impressive
lit up. We
too.
liked it.
Jake, I believe, was in the parade behind. So you were in the parade, right?
No, I didn't get a chance to go.
Oh, I thought you were there.
No, that was a different.
So anyway, the chamber put that on, and I heard nothing but good things. All the restaurants downtown were completely packed and booked. I know that the Ripon Roadhouse, they had reservations. People, and the whole place was packed and filled. You couldn't even get in there. So that was a good thing. And then I also would like to congratulate Mr. DeGraff and welcome him. And you actually look really pretty good today. But you don't need to wear that suit. You make me look bad.
Can I make a comment?
Go ahead.
Wasn't the parade put on by the police, fire, and the chamber?
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to clarify that it wasn't just the chamber.
Okay, I apologize for that error.
Okay, no, I just
With
wanted to be
that,
clear.
we will close the council meeting and open up the redevelopment meeting.
So moved.
Lisa, roll call.
Just be patient, Mr. Rashid.
Directors Jake Parks. Here. Leo Zuber.
Present.
Daniel DeGraff. Here. Vice Chairman Mike Restusha.
Present.
Chairman Dean Euchre.
Here. At this point is public discussion. Upon being recognized, come forward to the podium and state your name and address before proceeding into your subject matter. Seeing no one, we will close the public discussion and ask for approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Passes 5-0. Move on to the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Passes with a 5-0 and adjourned. Good night.